Good evening, friends. We thank God this evening that we can be together again to study. And this evening we are going to look at another Bible character who showed thankfulness in action or deeds for the kindness that he received. In Acts chapter 28 verses 1 to 9, let us read. Verse 1, once safely on shore, we found out that the island was called Malta. The islanders showed us unusual kindness. They built a fire and welcomed us all because it was raining and cold. Paul gathered a pile of brushwood, and as he put it on the fire, a viper, driven out by the heat, fastened itself on his hand. Verse 4, when the islanders saw the snake hanging from his hand, they said to each other, this man must be a murderer, for though he escaped from the sea, the goddess Justice has not allowed him to live. Verse 5, but Paul shook the snake off into the fire and suffered no ill effects. Verse 6, the people expected him to swell up or suddenly fall dead, but after waiting a long time and seeing nothing unusual happen to him, they changed their mind. Verse 7, there was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and showed us generous hospitality for 3 days. Verse 8, but his father was sick in bed, suffering from fever and dysentery. Paul went in to see him, and after prayer, placed his hands on him and healed him. And verse 9, when this had happened, the rest of the sick on the island came and were cured. Brothers and sisters, this is the story of Apostle Paul. He was in prison and he would be transferred to Rome with other prisoners. But while Paul and the other prisoners were on the ship going to Rome, they met a big storm on the way and the boat was destroyed. So Apostle Paul and the rest of his companions, the prisoners and the guards, were forced into the water by the storm, and they ended up on the island of Malta. This island of Malta is located between Sicily and Africa and is about 20 miles long. And let's look again in Acts chapter 28 verse 7. There was an estate nearby that belonged to Publius, the chief official of the island. He welcomed us to his home and showed us generous hospitality for 3 days. And take note, brothers and sisters, Publius and the whole island did not know these people, especially that these were prisoners. But this chief of the island, Publius, did not hesitate to show unusual kindness and hospitality for 3 days to these distressed strangers that were shipwrecked on their coast. They lit a fire for the soaking wet strangers and made them feel warm and welcome for 3 days. And let's see in verse 8. And it came to pass that the father of Publius lay sick of a fever and dysentery. So the house of Publius must have been sad because his father was very sick. Now my question is, if you were Publius and your father was sick, would you be able to entertain the strangers for 3 days? Maybe not. But you see the greatness of this man. While he was carrying a heavy load himself, he was willing to help carry the load of others. And that is a true greatness and nobility, my dear brothers and sisters. Now let's see how Apostle Paul showed thankfulness in action for the kindness he received from these islanders. Let us continue to read the passage in verse 8. And Paul visited Publius' father, who was deadly sick, and prayed, and putting his hand on him, and healed him. And in verse 9, and when this had taken place, the rest of the island who had diseases also came and were cured. What a beautiful story, my dear brothers and sisters. The islanders that had nothing in their mind but to show kindness and hospitality to these victims of a bad storm, and in return, Paul showed thankfulness in action by first praying for Publius' father, and he was healed. And secondly, when the islanders heard about it, those who had diseases also came and were cured. And though the Bible is silent, brothers and sisters, I would like us to stretch our imagination, knowing that Apostle Paul, being a missionary, preacher, teacher, and evangelist, I could imagine that Paul was sharing with them about salvation through Jesus Christ. And so, these islanders were not only healed physically, but also they were very blessed spiritually. Kaya mga minamahal ko mga kaibigan, ano po ang nakita nating aplikasyon sa kwentong ito? Maliwanag pong naipakita sa atin ni Apostol Pablo na ang pasasalamat ay hindi lamang sa pamamagitan ng puro salita, kundi ipinakita ni Apostol Pablo na ang kanyang pagpapasalamat ay kanyang ginawa sa pamamagitan ng gawa. Kaya mga kapatid, tandaan natin na nalulugod ang ating Diyos sa kaniyang mga anak na kung tayo din naman po ay marunong magsukli-sukli sa mga kabutihan na natatanggap natin sa ating kapwa at ganun din lalo tigit sa ating Diyos. Mayroon nga po tayong mga kasabihang mga Pilipino na ang taong hindi marunong lumingon sa pinanggalingan ay hindi makaroon sa paruroonan. Kaya ang tanong ko sa iyo, kapatid, sa gabing ito, gusto mo bang makarating ka sa iyong paroroonan? Then, I would encourage you na lumingon ka sa mga taong tumulong sa iyo. Yan man ay sa maliit na kaparaanan o sa malaking kadahilanan. Mga taong nag-encourage sa iyo, mga taong nagbigay ng magandang payo sa iyo nung panahong ikaw ay lugmok na lugmok at hindi mo alam ang iyong gagawin at didesisyon na iisipin. Yan ay mga dapat tinatanawan ng pasasalamat. Ganon din ang mga magulang at mga kapatid na nagpapaaral sa inyo. Iyan ay dapat na tinatanawan ng malalim na utang na pasasalamat. Ang mga magulang, ang mga kapatid na nagpapaaral sa inyo, mga sponsors, yan po ay ang mga taong instrumento na ginamit ng Panginoon para tayo ay matulungan, maiangat tayo or mapagaan ang ating mga buhay. At lalo na po yung mga kapatid na natin na nasa ibang bansa, todo sila ng kayod para matulungan ang kanilang pamilya back home. Kaya po, please, don't take them for granted. Don't take their kindness for granted. Don't take their help for granted. Sapagkat isinasakripisyo nila ang maraming mga bagay para sa inyo. Kaya po, at alam nyo bang hindi naman po nila obligasyon na pasanin ang lahat ng inyong mga pangangailangan, pero dahil sila ay mabuti, mapagmahal, kaya wag natin silang kalilimutan. Tatanawan ninyo sila ng pasasalamat. At wag lang once in a blue moon na ninyo silang pasasalamatan. Sapagkat sa ganyang mga kaparaanan, kaibigan, kahit na sa simpleng paraan lamang ay naipapakita ninyo sa kanila that you are eternally grateful and thankful for what they have done to you, my friends. Kaya ganun din po sa Panginoon, mga kapatid. Huwag nating lilimutin ang magpapasalamat sa ating Diyos sa lahat ng mga bagay na Kanyang ipinuprovide sa atin sa bawat araw. Hindi lang po sa pagkain na nakahapag sa inyong table, kundi na rin po sa tubig na ating iniinom. Alam niyo po ba, sa bawat araw na ako'y naliligo, bago ko buksan ang faucet, talagang papasalamat muna ako sa Panginoon sa pagkakalikha niya ng tubig. Dahil napakahirap pong i-maintain ang hygiene kung walang tubig, mga kaibigan. Kaya ganun na lamang ang aking pasasalamat sa ating Diyos na siya ay talagang binigyan tayo ng mga natural resources na blessing na ito. Na sapagkat walang sino man tao ang pwedeng makalikha ng tubig, kundi ang ating Diyos lamang. Sabi nga nila na pwede kang magutom ng ilang araw pero wag ka lang mawawala ng tubig sapagkat mamamatay ang tao pag hindi nakainom ng tubig sa maraming araw. Kaya mga kapatid ko, kung mayroon kayong tubig na nagagamit, ay isa po kayo sa napakapalad na tao sa buong mundo. Sapagkat sasabihin ko sa inyo, sa bansang Africa, tuyot na tuyot ang kanilang lupa dahil wala pong tubig na magamit para sila ay makapagtanim. Kaya nga po ang famine o ang tagutom ay napakatalamak sa bansang yaon, sa iba't ibang state ng Africa. Kaya sa tubig pa lamang mga kapatid na mayroon tayo na ipinoprovide ng ating Panginoon sa atin sa bawat araw ay super blessed na po talaga tayo. Plus kung mayroon pa tayong roof on our head, mayroon pa tayong damit na naisusuot, mayroon pa tayong sunshine na nagbibigay ng vitamin D at fresh air na ating nagagamit. Kaya napakarami mga kapatid ko. Kung ibubukas lamang natin lagi ang ating mga mata ay tunay na hindi tayo mauubusan ng ipagpapasalamat sa buong maghapon sa ating Diyos na laging nagpo-provide ng lahat ng ating mga pangangailangan sa bawat araw. Talagang sagana ang kanyang pagbibigay. Talagang He provided our basic needs and even our wants, mga kaibigan. Sabi nga po dito sa Psalm 107 verse 1, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord for He is good, His steadfast love endures forever." Kaya mga kaibigan, huwag nating kalilimutan na sa paggising natin sa umaga, buksan natin ang ating mga mata, tingnan natin kung ano ang mga dapat nating ipagpasalamat sa ating Diyos. Sapagkat ang pusong mapagpasalamat, kung yan po ang magiging bukang bibig ninyo na kayo ay magpapasalamat sa pagkagising-gising ninyo, sigurado po ako, ang inyong maghapon ay magiging isang kapaki-pakinabang at ang inyong attitude ay susunod. At ang inyong magandang pakiramdam at attitude ay susunod. Dahil kayo po ay sa kung ano ang sinasabi. Kaya ito po ang aking dalangin sa ating lahat mga kapatid ko, that may God help and richly bless you to have an inspiring, positive attitude of gratitude, praise, and thankfulness each day. God bless you and see you tomorrow.